In the heart of the jungle, a golden retriever puppy trembled, tied cruelly to a rough tree trunk. His soft whimpers carried into the heavy night air, each one weaker than the last. The rope cut into his fur, leaving raw marks across his fragile body. Overhead, branches creaked as unseen eyes glowed from the darkness. A black panther prowled just beyond the clearing, muscles coiled, hunger etched in every step. The pup pressed against the bark, too small to fight, too weak to escape. The predator moved closer, low and silent, the way only death in the jungle knows how to move. In that terrifying stillness, the forest itself seemed to hold its breath. A shadow shifted above, not the panther, but something else, something watching from the treetops, waiting for the moment to intervene. The jungle was about to decide who would live and who would be lost. High among the branches, a golden-brown monkey named Milo clung to the bark, amber eyes fixed on the desperate scene below. He had seen danger before, but never this close, never this cruel. The puppy's cries tore through him like sharpened thorns. Milo knew what lurked in the shadows, a hunter without mercy, a predator unmatched. He could stay safe in the canopy, high and untouchable, or he could dive into chaos for a creature he didn't know. His heart thundered in his chest, the choice clawing at him like the rope cut into the pup's skin. Safety meant survival. Risk meant likely death. Yet the image of the trembling pup, rooted helpless beneath the tree, was something Milo couldn't escape. Courage wasn't comfort, it was sacrifice. In that instant, instinct shifted. He released his grip on the branch. The jungle would not watch silently tonight. Milo chose the fight.
Milo leapt into the open air, body twisting, shrieking with a cry that split the night. Branches cracked as he swung, hurling sticks and leaves into the shadows. The panther's eyes narrowed, its attention ripped from the trembling puppy. With a flash of teeth, the predator lunged toward the distraction, but Milo was already climbing, flipping, moving faster than the strike. The jungle erupted in chaos, branches whipping, leaves scattering, claws swiping inches from his golden-brown fur. It was a dance of survival, the hunter chasing the trickster through a web of vines and limbs. For every swipe, Milo found a gap. For every leap, he found a grip. The puppy watched wide-eyed from below, rope still holding him fast, as if chained to his own terror. The panther snarled, furious at being denied its prey. Milo's gamble was working, but only if he could return in time. At last, the predator slunk back into shadow, its growls fading into the dark. Milo clung to a branch, chest heaving, sweat dampening his golden-brown fur. For a heartbeat, silence returned to the clearing, broken only by the weak whimpers of the pup below. Dropping swiftly from the canopy, Milo landed beside the tree. The puppy pressed tighter against the bark, eyes wide, body trembling in fear. The rope was thick, coarse, and wound with cruel precision, digging deep into the pup's tender skin. Milo's nimble fingers explored the knots, each one tighter than the last. He tugged, twisted, pulled. The rope bit harder, making the pup shiver in pain. Time pressed in heavy around them, for the panther was never gone for long. Every second counted. Milo leaned close, focusing on the task with desperate determination. He had driven away death once. Now he had to undo cruelty itself.
Milo's fingers worked furiously, slipping against the rough rope. The knots seemed endless, layered like cruel puzzles meant to trap life itself. Each twist tightened around the pup's fragile body, drawing a faint whimper that pierced the monkey's heart. Milo paused, steadying himself, then pried again with sharper force. A strand loosened, but not enough. He pressed his teeth against the rope, tugging hard until fibers frayed beneath the strain. Slowly, painfully, the tension began to shift. The pup's chest rose and fell in shallow breaths, his tiny body surrendering to exhaustion. Yet his eyes never left Milo's, clinging to the last fragile thread of hope. Sweat streaked through Milo's fur as another knot gave way, the rope loosening bit by bit. The jungle around them pulsed with danger, unseen but near. It was a race of breath, will against cruelty, and the outcome hung by a fraying thread. With one final yank, the last knot gave way. The rope slid free, falling into the dirt like the husk of a broken curse. The puppy collapsed forward, limbs shaking, golden fur damp with sweat and fear. For a long, aching moment, neither moved. Then, weak but certain, the pup lifted its head and pressed its nose to Milo's hand. A soft lick followed, a gesture of trust so pure it stilled the jungle itself. Milo tilted his head, startled by the touch, but did not pull away. The warmth of that moment wrapped around them both, rescuer and rescued, survivor and survivor. In the silence, something unspoken bound them together. The jungle had drawn them into its cruel trial, but compassion had carved a new path. From that moment forward, Milo was no longer alone, and the puppy was no longer abandoned. A fragile bond had been born.
The pup was too weak to walk, legs trembling under the weight of freedom. Milo crouched low, lifting him carefully against his chest. The puppy's head rested limply against the monkey's shoulder, breaths shallow but steady. With sure footing, Milo scaled the tree, carrying his new companion higher and higher into the canopy, where danger struggled to follow. The jungle stretched beneath them, wide and endless, but for the first time, Milo did not face it alone. In a quiet hollow woven of branches and leaves, he laid the pup gently on a bed of moss. Overhead, stars pierced the dark sky, watching like silent witnesses. Milo offered pieces of fruit, pressing drops of water from cupped leaves to the pup's lips. The golden retriever stirred, swallowing weakly. It was not much, but it was enough. What began as a rescue was now something deeper, an adoption of hope. The jungle did not slow for weakness. Each day tested strength, and Milo knew the puppy had to learn. Slowly, Buddy, as Milo named him in his heart, grew steadier on his feet. He stumbled at first, paws slipping across rough bark, but Milo guided him with patient nudges. Together, they climbed lower branches, leaping small gaps where vines draped like swinging ropes. Buddy's bark echoed for the first time, uncertain, yet strong enough to startle small creatures from the undergrowth. Nights were spent curled close, Milo keeping watch while Buddy rested safely against his side. The jungle whispered threats all around, but each lesson hardened the pup's spirit. Survival was no longer just Milo's skill, it was becoming Buddy's inheritance. The two were shaping each other, teacher and student, protector and growing defender. In every stumble and every success, their bond wove tighter against the endless wild.
It happened beneath the silver moon. The jungle was restless, leaves rustling in ways Milo had come to recognize as warning. From the shadows, those same crimson eyes glowed once more. The predator had returned. Milo froze, body tense, ready to fight or flee. But before he could move, Buddy stepped forward. His body was still small, not yet the size of a true guardian, but his stance was steady. A low growl rumbled from his chest, surprising even himself. The sound cut through the stillness like a blade. The panther paused, watching. Buddy's tail was tucked, ears back, yet he stood his ground between Milo and danger. Milo's heart swelled with both pride and fear. The little pup he had saved was no longer helpless. Courage had arrived in the form of a shaky growl, marking the first time Buddy chose to protect his rescuer. The panther lunged forward, claws slashing, but Milo was already in motion. With Buddy at his side, they darted through undergrowth, weaving between roots and boulders. Branches tore at Milo's fur. Dirt splashed beneath Buddy's paws, but they didn't slow. The predator gave chase, muscles rippling, breath hot and furious on their trail. Every sound was sharper: the snap of twigs, the thunder of paws, the scream of birds startled into flight. Yet for all its power, the panther could not match the desperate unity of two who had something greater than survival. They had each other. Side by side, monkey and pup ran deeper into the jungle, hearts pounding in unison. When at last the shadows thinned and silence returned, Milo looked down at Buddy. The dog's chest heaved, eyes alert, spirit unbroken. They were no longer rescuer and rescued. They were companions, fleeing as one.
Time reshaped the small retriever into something sturdier. Buddy's legs grew stronger, his bark deeper, carrying weight that reached beyond the treetops. No longer stumbling, he now climbed short ledges with confidence, leaping gaps he once feared. Milo watched closely, pride flickering in his amber eyes. The jungle no longer saw only a helpless pup. It now faced the beginnings of a guardian. Each morning, Buddy scouted ahead, sniffing trails, alert to the smallest crackle of leaves. He learned when to growl low, when to stand still, and when to push forward with courage. Milo, once teacher, began to sense a shift. Protection was no longer one-sided. The bond had become equal, forged by shared survival. Buddy wasn't just learning the jungle, he was preparing to defend his family. His journey was no longer about being saved, it was about becoming the savior himself. The jungle never forgets, and predators never abandon a hunt. One humid night, as the canopy whispered under a restless wind, crimson eyes glimmered again in the dark. The panther returned, silent, deliberate, more determined than before. Buddy stiffened, fur bristling, body standing tall before Milo. His growl rolled deep, stronger than the frightened rumble from weeks before. Milo crouched low, branches in hand, ready to fight alongside his companion. The predator prowled closer, tail flicking, muscles tightening with each step. The clearing was a battlefield waiting to erupt. This time, Buddy didn't cower or hide. He pressed forward, barking sharp and fierce, echoing against the trees like a challenge. For the first time, Milo wasn't alone in facing the jungle's shadow. The golden-brown monkey and the golden dog stood together, not just against hunger's teeth, but against the relentless cruelty of fear itself.
Moonlight spilled through the canopy, silver against golden fur. Buddy stood tall, Milo balanced on a branch just above him, both fixed on the panther's shadow. In that tense stillness, a pact was silently forged, not of words, but of presence. Fear no longer ruled them. Milo knew escape routes, Buddy knew loyalty, and together they had something the jungle couldn't crush: unity. The predator circled, muscles rippling, eyes burning with hunger. But when Milo's shriek rang out and Buddy's bark cut sharp through the night, the panther halted. It studied them, weighing the effort, before melting back into the shadows. Silence returned, thick and heavy. Milo dropped beside Buddy, their eyes meeting. What had started as rescue was now an unspoken promise. Whatever came, they would not face it alone. That night, under silver light, they became brothers bound by survival. Days later, the jungle's rhythm carried them through tangled roots and green-lit paths. Curiosity pulled Milo ahead,
eyes catching a strange glint among the leaves. In a heartbeat, danger struck. A hidden snare snacked upward, steel jaws clamping around his leg with brutal force. Milo's shriek ripped through the jungle, echoing like a wound torn open. He thrashed, pulling hard, but the trap only bit deeper, metal grinding into flesh. The pain was unbearable, his golden brown fur stained dark as he struggled. Buddy barked furiously, circling the trap, claws digging into dirt. He pushed, pulled, gnawed at the steel, but nothing gave way. Panic pressed heavy in the air. The jungle no longer held its usual rhythm, it throbbed with Milo's agony. The monkey, who had once freed a helpless pup, now found himself helpless, chained by cruelty he could not escape.
Buddy's barks rang out like thunder, his chest heaving as he clawed desperately at the ground around the trap. Milo writhed in pain, every tug slicing deeper into his leg. The once agile monkey was now pinned, powerless, reduced to broken cries. Buddy's whimpers shifted to sharp, frantic howls that echoed through the trees, not of fear, but of determination. He bit at the steel, teeth scraping against cold metal, sparks of pain flashing through his jaw. Nothing budged. He dug beneath the trap, mud flying, claws bleeding, but still it held. The weight of the jungle pressed heavy, time threatening to steal Milo away. Buddy pressed his head against Milo's arm, a desperate plea in his dark eyes. This was no longer about survival. It was about loyalty, about saving the one who had saved him. The jungle watched, silent witness to a desperate fight. In the chaos, Buddy froze, chest heaving, eyes darting. A memory flickered, Milo's deft fingers pulling at knots, loosening ropes that once bound him. The dog backed away, scanning the trap with new focus. His gaze caught the steel lever half buried in dirt. With a snarl, he shoved his shoulder against it. The trap groaned but held firm. He pushed harder, teeth gripping a fallen branch, wedging it beneath the lever. He growled, muscles straining, claws clawing at the ground for leverage. The jungle rang with the grinding sound of metal against wood. With one final heave, the lever snapped back. The steel jaws sprang open, releasing their cruel grip. Milo collapsed, trembling, his leg bleeding but free. Buddy panted, exhausted, but triumphant. He hadn't just fought with teeth, he had fought with memory. The rescuer had become the strategist, turning survival into salvation.
The snare lay open, defeated, its cruel purpose undone. Milo sprawled weakly on the ground, chest rising and falling in ragged rhythm. The agony of the trap still pulsed through his leg, but the air carried something new, freedom. Buddy hovered close, licking the wound, eyes wide with urgency. For the first time, the strong monkey who had once carried him was now the one carried in spirit. It was a reversal born not of weakness, but of bond. Milo met Buddy's gaze, amber eyes softening. The puppy he had untied from ropes had grown into a defender capable of undoing even steel. The jungle around them felt still, as if bowing to the shift in power. Roles had flipped, but the bond remained unbroken. They were no longer rescuer and rescued. They were saviors of each other, equal in strength, equal in loyalty. Darkness settled heavy across the canopy. Milo's breathing slowed but remained shallow, his body trembling from blood loss and shock. Buddy curled tightly against him, pressing warmth into his side, refusing to let him shiver alone. Every sound in the jungle made Buddy's ears twitch, but he did not leave. He licked Milo's wound, gentle and patient, cleaning away dirt with every stroke. The golden brown monkey, once fearless, now lay fragile, but the golden retriever stood sentinel. Hours stretched endlessly. Crickets sang, owls cried, and the air cooled. Still, Buddy remained, a silent guardian through the night. He had no words, only presence. But presence was enough. Beneath a canopy of stars, the roles of protector and protected had blurred into something unbreakable. They no longer survived as two, but endured as one, united in suffering, bound by devotion. The jungle had no power to part them. Sunlight pierced the leaves, gold spilling across the forest floor. Milo stirred weakly, his body aching, but his spirit alive. As his amber eyes fluttered open, the first thing he saw was Buddy, curled close,
head resting protectively on his chest. The retriever's steady breaths and watchful presence told the story of the night, loyalty that never faltered. Milo shifted slightly, pain flashing through his leg, but Buddy lifted his head immediately, eyes locked on him, tail giving the faintest wag. In that moment, awareness dawned like the sun above. Their bond was no longer about survival alone. It was about trust so deep it erased fear. Milo realized he was not carrying Buddy anymore. They were carrying each other. And in that realization, a quiet strength bloomed, a strength that promised no force, no predator, no trap would ever divide them again. But peace in the jungle is never permanent. From the shadows, the air thickened, a silence too sharp to ignore. Crimson eyes glowed once more, fixed and burning with hunger. The panther had returned. Milo braced himself, pain radiating through his wounded leg, but Buddy rose first. His body was no longer that of a helpless pup. Muscles rippled under golden fur, his stance wide and steady. He barked loud, sharp, defiant, the sound exploding across the jungle like thunder. The predator stepped forward, tail flicking, its growl vibrating through the air like a warning drum. The clearing became a battlefield waiting to ignite. This was not the same chase as before. This was the final reckoning, the moment predator, monkey, and dog would decide who truly owned the night. Buddy's teeth bared. Milo's grip tightened on branches. The jungle braced for war.
The predator's growls rumbled low, circling in the brush. Milo crouched low despite his wounded leg, clutching a sharpened stick torn from a fallen branch. He shifted his weight carefully, amber eyes never leaving the shadows. Beside him, Buddy prowled forward, chest low, ears flattened, growl deepening with every step of the panther. This was no longer panic, this was readiness. Every breath, every sound became sharpened into focus. Buddy's fur bristled along his spine, tail rigid, eyes fierce with purpose. Milo's heart thundered, but it was no longer fear, it was resolve. For the first time, they stood not as hunted prey, but as defenders of each other. The jungle held its breath, branches swaying with unseen tension. In that silent preparation, one truth burned clear. They would not run this time. Tonight they would fight, side by side, until the end. The panther erupted from the undergrowth, a streak of black fury, muscles surging with lethal force. Buddy met it head-on, a bark tearing through the night as his body collided with the predator. Teeth snapped, claws raked, fur and shadows twisting in a violent storm of motion. Milo shrieked from above, hurling branches, striking blows that split the air, distracting the beast whenever Buddy faltered. The clearing rang with chaos, growls, snarls, the crash of bodies rolling against roots and dirt. Buddy fought with more than muscle. He fought with purpose, every bite and push driving the panther back, away from Milo, away from the bond they had built. For every slash of claws, Buddy answered with teeth and fury. This was no chase, no escape. This was a stand. Monkey and dog fought as one, courage burning brighter than fear itself.
With one final surge, Buddy lunged, slamming his weight into the panther's chest. The predator stumbled, claws scraping the earth, snarling in frustration. Milo hurled another branch, striking its flank, tipping the balance. The panther staggered, its crimson eyes narrowing with bitter rage before retreating slowly into the shadows. A final growl rumbled through the clearing, a warning and a promise. Then silence. Buddy stood panting, chest heaving, golden fur streaked with dirt and sweat, but his eyes gleamed with victory. Milo dropped from the branches, limping heavily, and placed a trembling hand on Buddy's back. Together they stood in the hush of the jungle, not as prey, not as fugitives, but as victors. The predator was gone. What remained was unshakable. the bond of two survivors who had faced death and stood their ground against the darkness. The jungle led them back to the place where it had all begun. The tree stood silent, scarred with memory, its bark rough where the rope once cut into Buddy's flesh. Frayed strands still hung like ghosts of cruelty, swaying faintly in the breeze. Milo and Buddy paused beneath its shadow, neither moving at first. For Buddy, it was the place of suffering, of helpless cries that once echoed through the night. For Milo, it was the place of choice, where he had risked everything for a stranger. Now they returned, not as victims, but as brothers forged through fire. Buddy pressed his nose against the tree, then stepped back, chest tall, tail steady. The rope that once bound him was powerless now. They had come full circle, returning to face the past, not with fear, but with strength earned through survival together.
Milo rested a hand on Buddy's golden fur, the warmth beneath his palm steady and strong. Their colors glowed together under the filtered sunlight. Golden brown monkey and golden retriever, side by side, a living monument to resilience. The rope at the tree's base was nothing more than a relic, powerless against the bond that had grown. Every scar, every fight, every night endured had shaped them into more than companions. They were a family. The jungle, once filled with constant threats, now seemed quieter, bowing in reverence to what had been built. Survival was no longer a lonely fight. It was shared, it was celebrated, it was enduring. Milo closed his eyes, exhaling, and felt Buddy lean gently into him. The bond was not just survival anymore, it was destiny. Together, they were no longer victims. They were guardians of each other, of the bond they refused to lose. The sun dipped low, casting the jungle in a golden haze. Milo limped forward, his injured leg still tender, but Buddy walked close at his side, supporting him with steady presence. They moved slowly, deliberately. Each step echoing the rhythm of survival turned companionship. The forest, once a place of danger and despair, now stretched ahead like a shared home. Leaves rustled above, birds called from distant branches, but the sounds no longer felt threatening. They were the backdrop of a new beginning. Side by side, the monkey and dog vanished deeper into the forest paths, not as strangers, not as rescued and rescuer, but as equals. Their journey had begun in fear and chains, but it ended in freedom and brotherhood. For Milo and Buddy, the jungle was no longer a test. It was the place they would call home, together.
From behind, the leaves stirred, a rustle that chilled the air. Buddy froze, ears snapping back, eyes narrowing. Milo tensed, branch clutched tight. For a heartbeat, the crimson eyes returned, glowing faintly from the undergrowth. The panther lingered, silent, watching. But this time, its growl never came. Instead, it turned slowly, retreating into the darkness once more. The predator's shadow slipped away, not defeated by force alone, but by recognition. The fight was no longer worth it. Buddy's stance eased, tail lifting in calm strength, while Milo's grip relaxed. The threat that once ruled their nights was gone, not because the jungle had grown safer, but because they had grown stronger. Predator and prey no longer defined them. They had risen beyond those roles. What remained was unshakable. Two survivors the jungle would never bend again. The jungle lay quiet after the shadow passed. Buddy pressed against Milo, eyes soft, chest still rising with steady breath. Milo rested his hand across Buddy's retriever's back, fingers brushing through golden fur. In that silence, no words were needed. The promise was clear in every touch, every breath, every shared glance. Never apart, never abandoned. Buddy would guard Milo as fiercely as Milo had once guarded him. Their story was not just about rescue. It was about an unbroken chain of loyalty. Above, the canopy opened, a beam of light pouring through, wrapping them in a glow that felt like a blessing. Survival was no longer the question. The answer was already living between them: protection, devotion, love without condition. Milo and Buddy didn't need to speak it. The jungle already knew. Their bond was forever.
Days turned quieter after the battle, life falling into new rhythms. Buddy scouted trails, his golden coat glinting between shadows as Milo gathered fruits from the canopy. At dusk, they rested together in a nest of woven leaves, the forest's lullabies carrying them into peace. Where once fear had pressed in from every corner, now calm stretched wide. They were not naive. The jungle would always hold danger, but danger no longer owned them. Their trust, their bond, their unshakable unity was stronger than any predator. In Buddy's steady breathing, Milo found calm. In Milo's watchful eyes, Buddy found safety. The jungle, once cruel, had become their home. And in every quiet moment, they carried the memory of how it began. A rope, a tree, and the choice to fight for each other. From suffering grew strength. From strangers grew family. Their story began with cruelty, a helpless pup tied to a tree and a monkey forced to make an impossible choice. It unfolded through battles, traps, and shadows, each trial binding them tighter. By the end, they were no longer rescuer and rescued. They were brothers, equal, unbreakable, defenders of one another. Milo and Buddy proved that compassion can turn weakness into courage, that survival becomes destiny when shared, and that even in the darkest jungle, love can find a way. The rope once tied Buddy to fear, but now it lay powerless, a forgotten relic beneath the tree of their beginning. Side by side, golden brown and golden, they walked into the wild not as prey, but as guardians of each other. Their bond is a reminder. Sometimes the ones we save grow strong enough to save us right back.